You're welcome in this place where God meets us in love.
Why are we here? We are here to love God with all that we have and all that we are.
You are welcome in this place where God loves us as children.
Why are we here? We are here to love ourselves as deeply as God loves us.
Welcome to this place where God serves us at the table of love and grace.
Why are we here? We are here to be sent forth to love others as deeply as we love God and ourselves.
Welcome in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Johann Gottfried Walther, whose dates are 1684 to 1748, was a German organist, composer, theorist, and lexicographer, who is, what that word implies, an author of a dictionary. His mother was a close relative of the J.S. Bach family. At age 18, he received his first position as organist at St. Thomas in Erfurt, and while attending the university there, he developed a lifelong devotion to the study of music theory. In 1707, Walther was appointed organist for the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul in Weimar, and only a year later, J.S. Bach joined the court orchestra there, and they began a lifelong friendship that benefited both of these musical geniuses who were almost the same age. They were so close that Walther asked Bach to be his eldest son's godfather. Of great influence on music history was Walther's continuing study of musical knowledge and his collecting of a wide library of music and books on music. His greatest contribution in this vein is his Musikalisches Lexikon, published in 1732. It was the first major music dictionary in German and the first in any language to include both musical terms and biographies of musicians and composers, both past and from his same era. It includes more than 3,000 musical terms from no less than 200 authors.
in our confession where we realize our desire for God and our hope for God's mercy. It is in admitting the truth of our lives that we take the first step toward wholeness and healing. So let us make our confession first in silent prayer.
God of all the saints, God of all the sinners, hear our prayer. We would be saint-like, holy, good, patient, and loving. But we end up feeling more like sinners, full of failures of morality, selfish, mean. Perhaps you see us simply as human, as beloved and flawed, and trying and failing and succeeding. In all of this, forgive the wrong that we have done and bless the good we have accomplished. Keep on loving us and helping us and molding us more and more into the image of Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen.
Friends, hear this good news. The love of God is beyond measure, and you are included in that love. Know that you are forgiven and thus freed to love and serve. Alleluia. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you all.
And also with you.
we pray, God, we come to you in need of blessings. Send your Spirit upon us. Bless our mourning and our longing for righteousness. Have mercy with us and make us merciful. Bless our hearts to see you. Bless our words and actions to work for peace. Give us the strength and bold confidence to speak up for the kingdom of God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Our psalm is Psalm 24. The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and those who dwell therein. For the Lord has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. Ascend the mountain of the Lord, and who may stand in God's holy place? Those of innocent hands and purity of heart, who do not swear on God's being, nor do they pledge by what is false. They shall receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of their salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek you, O Lord, of those who seek your face, O God of Jacob. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O everlasting doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? Truly, the Lord of hosts is the King of glory. Our lesson is Ezekiel 37, verses 1 through 14. The hand of the Lord came upon me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord, and set me down in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me all around them. There were very many lying in the valley, and they were very dry. He said to me, "Mortal, can these bones live?" I answered, "O Lord God, you know." Then he said to me, "Prophesy to these bones, and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord God to these bones, I will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live. I will lay sinews on you, and will cause flesh to come up on you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live, and you shall know that I am the Lord." So I prophesied as I had been commanded, and as I prophesied, suddenly there was a noise, a rattling, and the bones came together, bone to its bone. I looked, and there were sinews on them, and flesh had come upon them, and skin had covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, "Prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, mortal, and say to the breath, Thus says the Lord God, Come from the four winds, O breathe, and breathe upon these slain, that they may live." I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood on their feet, a vast multitude. Then he said to me, "Mortal, these bones are the whole house of Israel." They say, "Our bones are dried up, and our hope is lost. We are cut off completely. Therefore prophesy and say to them, Thus says the Lord God, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from your graves, O my people, and I will bring you back to the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am the Lord, when I open your graves and bring you up from your graves, O my people. I will put my spirit within you, and you shall live, and I will place you on your own soil. Then you shall know that I, the Lord, have spoken and will act, says the Lord. Word of God, word of life. Thanks be to God.
Seated on the throne will shelter them.
The Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again, greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Mary and Martha weep. They cry and cry over the death of their beloved brother Lazarus. They cry over his death and about all the hopes that died in them through his death, about the dreams and plans that died. Never again will Mary and Martha be who they are in the eyes of Lazarus. Never again will someone see them exactly like Lazarus. Never again. His bed will stay empty. His place at the table will be empty. His heavy steps won't be heard again in the hallway, or his snoring at night. All the little things that used to bother them, what would they now give to be bothered by them one more time? To Mary, it feels almost like homesickness in her own home. She can hardly move or think. She walks around like in trance. People start whispering around her, trying not to disturb her, while there is really nothing that could disturb her anymore because death has done it all. And Martha, on the other hand, we already know her a little bit. She keeps herself as busy as can be. She cooks for visitors and for the mourners. She cleans, she washes, until she falls asleep without dreams. Because that's the goal for Martha, not to think, not to feel too much, because it would be too much. She knows her limits, and so she carries on. And they were both so hopeful. They had faith in God, in Jesus, in prayers, in the universe, whatever people want to call that power that's greater than death. They called for Jesus to come, to hurry and to save Lazarus, the friend Jesus said he loves. I mean, what can be more important than hurrying to help a friend? Why did it take him so long? So amidst the sadness and the lostness, anger starts boiling up. Where is Jesus when you need him? Where are his miracles, his medicine, his cure for almost anything? And then anger turns into despair. Maybe Jesus isn't who he claims after all. Maybe he's just a quacksalver, or even worse, maybe he has the powers and he just chooses not to come and not to help. Maybe he thinks that this particular family isn't worthy of his attention. I mean, in the end, the reasons don't really matter though, do they? The facts are crystal clear. Jesus didn't come, Lazarus died, and now, and that's the worst, Lazarus has been dead for over 3 days. And it takes the soul to leave the body. It takes the soul 3 days to fully leave the body. That's what Mary and Martha believed. And at the end of that 3rd day, they give up because the soul is gone. Death won. Lazarus is gone. Even if Jesus came now, there's really nothing he can do anymore. And so then, of course, ironically, on the 4th day, of course, they hear voices outside of the house. And Mary wonders a little bit if she's dreaming or if she might have gone mad. And then she sees Jesus. And she can't but blame him for Lazarus' premature death. She says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Mary blames Jesus, and she acknowledges her deep faith into Jesus' power of life, to nourish life, to save life, because that she has witnessed before, that she believes. And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. So Jesus grieves the death of his friend Lazarus. He grieves the pain of his friends, Mary and Martha, over their loss. He grieves what they must have gone through those past 4 days, thinking all hope had been lost. Jesus grieves with a similar mix of emotions like Mary and Martha. He is angry. The text says he was greatly disturbed in spirit, but the Greek actually means he was actually angry. He's angry and he weeps. He's fully immersed into the states of grief. And finally, he asks where he can find Lazarus' body. Mary and Martha lead him to the tomb, and some people think that Jesus just wants to say his farewells to his beloved friends, and others can't stop blaming Jesus by honoring him as a man with power over the living. So some say, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? And this time, Jesus gets angry. There's so much the people around him don't seem to understand about him. A, he didn't come to overcome death in general. People will still be dying during and after Jesus' time on earth. He came to end death as an eternal death sentence, not to end death on earth. B, death itself isn't the problem. Believing that death is the end, that's devastating. Believing that there's no hope, that death is the ultimate worst that can happen to us, that's what Jesus came to overcome. And then C, in order to resurrect, one has to die. That's physics, basically. Even Lazarus will have to die again eventually in order to be resurrected at the end of times with Jesus. And D, last but not least, it's great that people believe in Jesus' ability to heal people, but they don't seem to believe that he also has the power over death. Not even Mary, who has been listening so attentively to him and closely. His powers are still beyond her imagination. So there's a lot he can be angry about. And then Jesus arrives at the tomb. And now he isn't angry anymore. He is overwhelmed by sadness and desperation. The look of the dead body, the smell, the broken hope in the sister's eyes. Suddenly Jesus sees. He sees Lazarus' legacy, what he has left, how much he was loved, and how deeply he's missed. He sees that those 4 days without Lazarus have shaken Mary and Martha to the core. Those 4 days have changed them. He sees that the pain they have experienced, the loss, the desperation, the great sadness, all of this has changed them forever. And raising Lazarus from the dead won't erase those traumatic days, those 96 hours, those 5,760 seconds they thought they would never see Lazarus again. Happy ends don't undo trauma. Healing doesn't undo suffering. They just override it. Yet underneath, the memory of pain is deeply engraved into the skin. It's too much to stand, even for Jesus. This is real. It's no game, no simple presentation of power. People have been hurt, and they will never forget the pain of those past 4 days, ever again. And that reality seems to hit Jesus as he walks into the tomb. He knows, he always knew that he would raise Lazarus in just a few minutes, right? That's what he came for. Yet what happened has happened. The scars will stay. The fear of losing a brother for good. Resurrection is no reset. It's new hope, but built on the pain of our losses. And those losses stay losses nevertheless. They change us. And Jesus acknowledges that in this story, and Jesus weeps. And only then, Jesus calls, Lazarus, come out. And I imagine him a little bit like a zombie man coming out of the tomb. They unbind him and they let him go. Lazarus now is back, right? A happy end. Back in a world, though, that has changed since he left it 4 days ago. While Lazarus actually might not have been too affected by his own death, because after all he was dead, his family and friends, they have lost their easiness around him. They treat him with caution now. ever worried about his health and his well-being, and strangers stare at him, not sure whether to be in awe or in panic over the miracle. From now on, he is the man who lived. What's more threatening than death? Someone who can beat death. Someone who can breathe life into dry bones, as we heard in the Ezekiel reading today. Someone who says, I am the resurrection. Not someone who says, I bring resurrection. Jesus doesn't say that. He says, I am the resurrection. And that's threatening, and Jesus knows that. He knows that the moment the authorities will get word of Lazarus' resurrection, they will come for him, Jesus. Because they didn't like him before already, but now Jesus is a real threat. Now he has proven to be one of the prophets that Ezekiel prophesied. The one bringing dry bones back to life. People who don't have anything to lose, not even their lives, those people are dangerous. They're fierce, they can rise up, and they can overthrow systems. And Jesus knows that, and he knows that the people in power know. He knows that by raising Lazarus, he put the final nail into his own coffin. The cross is inevitable now. He just gave his life to save Lazarus. And today we celebrate All Saints. We remember the people we have lost and we still miss. The saints who have changed us through their lives, through their suffering, and through their death. Through the loss and pain we feel. The saints who were ordinary people just like us and just like Lazarus, and beloved to us, with their complicated stories and their lives. We celebrate them, though, today because Jesus promises us that death does not disconnect us from God. That death isn't actually the end. And that therefore we, the living, we will always be connected with the living dead through Jesus Christ. And that the dead will always be connected to us, the deadly living. Until one day, when we will all be risen again, and death will be no more, ever. Thanks to Jesus Christ, who doesn't only have the power over life, but also over death. Amen.
Please join me, if you would, in confessing our faith in the words of the Apostles' Creed. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, God's only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day, he arose again. He ascended into heaven. He is seated at the right hand of the Father, and he will come to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. God, you have been with us throughout the ages. You have borne witness to the ways in which the story of us, of all that we have come into being, has been woven together, piece by piece, life by life. We recognize you today that it is because of the saints who have gone before us that we are. Those who have struggled for justice, who have given so that others may live more freely. We would not be if not for them. Because of those who have loved us, those who have nurtured us, embraced us, celebrate us, or supported us, we are because they were. In remembrance and gratitude, we name the saints who have shaped our lives and being.
And if you would like to light a candle in remembrance for someone who has died, we invite you to light a candle and call out their name, and then Jason will ring a bell after you have lit your candle and shared the loved one's name. We light a light for those we want to remember, a light for hope, a light as a prayer beyond words, a light to let go, a light to hold on. We remember those dear to us. And I remember Naomi Jeffries Klein, the mother of Keith Glasson.
We light a light for the many faceless neighbors we have lost during the pandemic in our country. We light a light for neighbors all over the world, one for each of the millions lost during the pandemic. We light these lights for hope. We light these lights as a prayer beyond words. Excuse me. We light these lights to let go. We light these lights to hold on. We pray. God of all, life here and now, life beyond death, God of many names, reaching out through beliefs and traditions, and sometimes despite these things. God reaches out with a hand to hold and an ear to listen. Let your spirit move among us. Let burdens be lifted. Let hearts be lightened. May your suffering people find peace, and may those who mourn know they are blessed in you. We also hold in remembrance the ones whose lives were taken by injustice, the ones who never knew their own belovedness, the ones who passed on our faith, the ones who gave us art, gave us song, gave us poetry. We are because they were. Like us, we know they were imperfect too. There is no life that is not messy and contradictory, often betraying the very just and love we seek to embody. And yet, You, O God, promise that our labor to love is never made in vain. Help us to learn on the witness of those who have gone before us, drawing on the love, justice, community, and faith that weaves us together, generation after generation, past, present, and future. Amen. Thank you for all you are, you do, and you give to help our congregation thrive and the world become a better place. We think what we offer is not that much or can accomplish anything of worth, but with you, Holy God, all things are possible. So we trust you will use them, multiply them, offer them to those who need hope, healing, grace, and peace in their lives. Amen.
Good morning. I'm sure you recognize this cycle of blessings. This year-long study that we did, that your stewardship committee did, really caused us to take a bigger, broader look at the blessings that God has bestowed on us and how we get to be the conduit to some of these blessings. We see this often. Good morning, how are you today? I'm well, thank you. What does this mean, I am well? I've taken the liberty of condensing the very specific definitions of wellness that the KI Institute has. These are the Cliff Notes version. Wellness means that, well, the state of wellness is reached as a result of deliberate effort to be physically healthy. We all know that, that's old news. Healthy diet, exercise, we know that. Be socially active with family, friends, and within your community. This one has really slammed us in the past 20 or so months because so many people have lost so much. People who have been housed have lost their homes. Older folks on fixed incomes are now without a home. People have lost friends and loved ones to the pandemic, and our community is suffering. We see people on the streets, we see people who we should be acquaintances, we should be seeing in stores, and we haven't seen them because they're not going out. Being socially active has been really a challenge, as has being financially stable for some people. To be healthy, we need to share what we can, and we need to be frugal, spend wisely. And that too has been difficult as people have lost jobs. And in order to be well, we need to sustain each other, especially in these two bullets, socially active and financially stable. It takes all of us to do that. Be environmentally proactive. We need to reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. Take care of where we live, or we will not be taken care of. We need to be spiritually connected to our worship community. We've done a pretty good job of that within our church. We probably need to reach out even more to connect with people in our community spiritually. And this last one is really important. To sustain wellness, human, financial, and material resources, as well as natural resources, need to regenerate and recirculate. So when we are really the conduit for being socially active and sharing all these blessings, we have an opportunity to have these blessings and share these blessings with our family, our church, our community. And as we do that sharing, we also benefit from that. It's sort of like if you have a chain and someone or something in that chain is not strong. If your chain is your family and someone in your family is struggling, you struggle too because you worry about them. The same with our church, we struggle together, and our community. If we look around and we see people struggling in our community, then our community is not well. These are some of the things that we already do. We do a lot. We're not a bad conduit for God's blessings. But how are we made well? By helping others. And this is what we can talk about in the breakout room. We do all these things. You know these things. I don't need to go over all these things. We've been sewing. We've been helping the homeless. We've been feeding the hungry. We've been praying, and we share our space. But why? How are we made well? By helping these others. So Alan, if you'll break us out into breakout rooms, we can share our thoughts on that.
Wherever and whoever you are, communion with God is coming to you, prepared to welcome your guest. The Lord be with us. We lift up our hearts, we lift them to the Lord. We give thanks to the Lord our God. It is indeed right to give you all thanks and praise, O God, for you are preparing a rich banquet for all your saints, that we might rejoice forever in your salvation. The earth is yours, for you founded it, and you have made your home among its inhabitants. Through your prophets you gave us a vision of a world made anew, and of suffering and grief abolished forever. In your Son, Jesus Christ, we have seen your deep anguish over the death of your faithful ones, and in his life-giving ministry we have seen your glory. Though he passed through the fires of death, we now see him raised up and making all things new. In him is our hope of resurrection and vindication for all who have trusted you, for their souls are safe in your hands, and you have declared them to be worthy of your life. And so, with all the choirs of angels, with the church on earth and the hosts of heaven, we praise your name and join their unending hymn. You all to say the words of institution together with me so that they will be said and heard in every single one of our home churches. On the night in which he gave himself up for us, he took bread, gave thanks to you, broke the bread, gave it to his disciples and said, "Take, eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." When the supper was over, he took the cup, gave thanks to you, gave it to his disciples and said, "Drink from this, all of you. This is my blood of the new covenant, poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." Great is the mystery of faith.
Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ is alive again.
Please join me, if you would, for the Lord's Prayer. Jesus called God his Father, so do we. Please pray in the language and translation of your heart. Our Father in heaven,
hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial, and deliver us from evil. The kingdom, power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen.
now and forever. Amen.
God's gifts for God's people. The body of Christ given for you. The blood of Christ shed for you.
grateful for this communion. May we be surrounded with its strength and comfort, those we know. May we search out those we do not know to offer hope and help widely and freely.
Amen.
Amen.
And now, may God keep a protective eye on you. May Christ Jesus show you his grace and mercy. And may the Holy Spirit give you a vision of the life of the world made new. Amen.